Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahansa Padurikacharya Ashtotar Tata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padurikacharya Ashtotar Tata Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Fan. No oscillation on low. Pointed perfectly. No, just one is fine. Just to cool me down a little bit. We're okay. Is the door open? Yeah, that's good, because we got a noisy pump on top of that roof over there. And this, just keep your eye on it. If someone walks in without a mask, make sure they're going to wear a mask. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, before we begin, you might have to move also if the lady comes. So just keep your eye out. Okay. On this 31st day of August, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we have begun again, and we're in the introduction on page 10. Second paragraph. Page 10. Not more Roman numeral, regular 10. Okay, we'll read a little bit and then we'll discuss. The Supreme Conscious Ishvara is similar to the living entity in this way. Both the consciousness of the Lord and that of the living entity are transcendental. It is not that consciousness is generated by the association of matter. That is a mistaken idea. The theory that consciousness develops under certain circumstances of material combination is not accepted in the Bhagavad Gita. Consciousness may be pervertedly reflected by the covering of material circumstances, just as light reflected through colored glass may appear to be a certain color. But the consciousness of the Lord is not materially affected. Lord Krishna says, Maya Jakshena Prakriti. When he descends into the material universe, his consciousness is not materially affected. If he were so affected, he would be unfit to speak on transcendental matters as he does in the Bhagavad Gita. One cannot say anything about the transcendental world without being free from materially contaminated consciousness. So the Lord is not materially contaminated. Time out. Okay. Okay. Our consciousness at the present moment, however, is materially contaminated. The Bhagavad Gita teaches that we have to purify this materially contaminated consciousness. In pure consciousness, our actions will be dovetailed to the will of the Ishvara, and that will make us happy. It is not that we have to cease all activities. Rather, our activities are to be purified. And purified activities are called bhakti. Activities in bhakti appear to be like ordinary activities, but they are not contaminated. An ignorant person may see that a devotee is acting or working like an ordinary man, but such a person with a poor fund of knowledge does not know that the activities of the devotee or of the Lord are not contaminated by impure consciousness or matter. They are transcendental to the three modes of nature. We should know, however, that at this point our consciousness is contaminated. When we are materially contaminated, we are called conditioned. False consciousness is exhibited under the impression that I am a product of material nature. This is called false ego. One who is absorbed in the thought of bodily conceptions cannot understand his situation. The Bhagavad Gita was spoken to liberate one from the bodily conception of life, and Arjuna put himself in this position in order to receive this information from the Lord. One must become free from the bodily conception of life. That is the preliminary activity for the transcendentalist. One who wants to become free, who wants to become liberated, must first of all learn that he is not this material body. Mukti, or liberation, means freedom from material consciousness. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, also, the definition of liberation is given. Muktir hitvan yata rupam swarupena vivastitihi. Mukti means liberation from the contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in pure consciousness. All the instructions of the Bhagavad Gita are intended to awaken this pure consciousness, and therefore we find at the last stage of the Gita's instructions that Krishna is asking Arjuna whether he is now in purified consciousness. Purified consciousness means acting in accordance with the instructions of the Lord. This is the whole sum and substance of purified consciousness. Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. But for us, there is the affinity of being affected by the inferior modes. But the Lord, being the Supreme, is never affected. That is the difference between the Supreme Lord and the small individual souls. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, in previous paragraphs in this introduction, Srila Prabhupada explained that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna discusses 5 subjects. Now, I don't know if you were here for that discussion. Okay. Do you remember what they were? Time is one of them. Jiva. Okay, you got 2 out of 5. Can you name the other 3? Okay, you got 1, karma. Now it's Alex's turn. Prakriti. 1 more. The speaker of the Gita. The Ishvara, the God. Yeah, we begin our discussion here with the supreme conscious Ishvara is similar to the living entity. So you have these 5. Ishvara, the supreme controller. God, the jiva, or the individual living entity. Prakriti, material nature, which is being moved and controlled by time. And then you have karma, which is activity. Activity of the jiva. So which one of those isn't eternal? Bhakta Glenn. Yes. Karma, which in this case means either material activity or the results of material activity, which we're bound by, can be ended. That's the thrust of a large part of the first part of the Gita, especially the Karma Yoga chapter, which is geared toward directing us to make every activity we perform as sacrifice, so that we're not doing it simply to enjoy the fruits of the activity. We're giving the fruits over to Krishna. And therefore, there's no reaction. This is called Naishkarmya. Now, why is that important? Because the reason why we take birth again and again and again is because of our karmic reactions, either good or bad. And karmic reactions, see, everything depends on the motive that we're acting. Why are we doing what we're doing? Now, the standard motive in conditioned life, in the modes of nature, is you want some fruit. You want some money to buy some sense gratification. On a higher plane, which is very rare, you want to perform sacrifice so you go to heaven, so you can enjoy in heaven much more than here. The ultimate result, or the ultimate goal, is still a selfish goal, you see. So anything done, as Krishna says in this very important verse in the 3rd chapter, Yagyartart kamano nyatra loko yam karma bandhanaha. That work, anything we do, has to be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu. Otherwise, whatever we do is going to bind us to this world. Now, that's a pretty tall order, because when you think about it, why else do we do things? You get up in the morning, go to work, you're getting a salary so you can pay your bills, you can live in your house, you can enjoy it. In other words, it's just a standard issue, motivation in the conditioned state, that you want something for your labor. Now, and even in so-called loving relationships, there's kind of a quid pro quo understood there, just like when we were kids, I'll be your friend if you'll be mine, In other words, in the end, there's always some egotistical thing going on. So, but that binds us to this world, that false ego, that false sense of that I am this material body, which Prabhupada talks about here, which is the foundational assumption of the false ego. I'm this body, and the things that please this body are good, and let me try to, get those. And you can spin it out into very subtle things too. In other words, it's not just the physical body; it's also the subtle body. That's sometimes much more important. Emotional, happiness can be much more intense than anything physical. So, as Prabhupada explains here, the whole idea is to purify the consciousness. All of this self-centeredness, false ego, which keeps us bound here, is a kind of contamination on the consciousness of the soul. And therefore, what's the first instruction or the first statement in the Shikshastika? Mukunda Charan, you know this verse. Chaitadharvana Marjanam. That Harinam Sankirtan, the holy name of Krishna, purifies or clears the mirror of the mind. The whole idea is that the mind is your thoughts, your sense of self. It's been clouded by various material desires, and that is preventing us from seeing ourselves, seeing Krishna for who we really are. So when that's cleared away, one sees not just the self but the selves in the heart. Right? We learn there are two selves in the heart. Chaitragya chapimam vidhi sarva chaitresha bharata. Krishna says in chapter 13. There's a Chaitragya. It's interesting that, the different way the jiva is described. Chaitragya means the knower of the field. We know our body better than anyone else knows it. But we still don't know that much about it. How it's going on, how it's working, all these different things. We're basically in ignorance. But still, our consciousness is avinashi tatat buddhi yena sarvamidam tatam. That the consciousness is spread throughout the body and it's indestructible. But the body is certainly destructible. So when we identify with the body, we're identifying ourselves with mortality, with the end. And that itself is incompatible with the real nature of the soul. We're Satchidananda by nature. We're eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss, like Krishna. But in these bodies, we're certainly not Satchidananda. So there's kind of an incompatibility there. And the tension between who we actually are and who we've forgotten we are, our real nature, and the temporary nature of this body and the fact that there's all kinds of miseries involved with it. This is why we can never find real peace and happiness in this bodily conception of life, conditioned conception. So the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita, as Srila Prabhupada explains, is to purify our consciousness. And the way of doing that is by bhakti, which simply means dovetailing our activities of body, mind, and intelligence with the will of the Lord. Will of the Lord. And the first thing he says is, think of me. Think of me. Man mana. You see? And don't think of me just theoretically, but practically. Bhava mag bhakta. And as soon as you say, become my bhakta, there's a whole bunch of things to do. You know, you go to the Nectar of Devotion, 64 different ways, ways of serving Krishna based on those 9, hearing about Krishna, chanting about him, serving him, becoming his friend, surrendering everything. So then if you agree to do that, then you need instruction, because it's very what does it say? Straight is the gate in the Bible. You know, the word is not so. Not everyone thinks, it's a very straight path. No, it's thin, it's narrow. The Straits of Gibraltar, right? It's spelled differently. So that means that it's a razor's edge. We call it like a razor's edge. You need guidance. Otherwise, there's no way you can figure it out on your own. And luckily, we've been given guidance. This is what Prabhupada came to give, the philosophy and the practice of Krishna consciousness. Both have to be there. Famously said, this is one of his most famous statements in the Bhagavad Gita, religion without philosophy is fanaticism, or sentimentality and sometimes fanaticism. Philosophy without religion is just mental speculation. And that just struck home so radically for any Westerner. All this philosophy, the Western philosophers from Plato and Socrates up to Hegel and Marx and all of this stuff. It's a whole lot of philosophical, speculation. And they came close to certain, to some real concepts, but without being able to break out of the limitations of the material mind, however smart you may be, you're bound to come to false conclusions because you're relying on your imperfect senses and your imperfect mind. And so that revelatory aspect, which is here in Bhagavad Gita in spades, it's God himself speaking. This is the sure source of knowledge that can really penetrate and give us the guidance that we need to traverse this straight gate, this razor's edge, and actually achieve the goal of life, which is purify our consciousness, regain our divine nature by dovetailing our consciousness with Krishna and activities with Krishna, and regain what we've lost, which is that eternal life of bliss and knowledge. That's our nature. So that's what we're after. And naturally, there's very few of us, because most people are completely bewildered in the goal of life and how to achieve it. There's all kinds of distractions and impossible courses that they go in. So we have to be determined not to fall back into the illusion that we've been delivered from. So, any questions on these points or on what we read? Go ahead, Bibu. Well, yeah. Well, the material world. Harekrishna. Come on, Christian. Come on in. I can recognize you even with the mask on. Yeah, you can sit here. We'll get a book for you. And we're on page 11, actually. It's starting over. It's in the introduction. So the material world is necessary for us. We're in the minority. not just because we're human beings, but because we're part of all the conditioned souls. There's, 7 billion and 7.5 billion human beings on this earth, and countless more insects and plants and all these. They're all living entities, just as we are. But they're in a much lower consciousness. So the material world is a place where it's kind of, think of it like this. In the spiritual world, there is absolute harmony. The whole idea there is that everything is in tune with Krishna's desires. There's all those relationships he can have with infinite living entities, in their personal, custom-made, fulfilling relationship, friend, servant, lover, parent, whatever it may be. Even the cows, everything has, they're fully conscious. Everything is fully conscious. Now, somehow or other, and there's no other explanation for it, one of those living entities or a few decide to try to enjoy separately from Krishna. Now, you can imagine how disruptive that would be. It's like here in the ashram, if suddenly, Bhakta X, not Alex, X, decides that I'm not getting up so early, that's cripping my style. And they find a little weed up in his ashram, in his bunk, and he's trying to, he's not following the program, So, X Prabhu, sorry, you can't stay in the ashram. Back out into the material world, If you find that you're ready to surrender, you come back. Just like that, because it's so disruptive. In other words, everyone else's Krishna consciousness is going to be disrupted by that. So there has to be a place. We're eternal. We never die. We never get born. There has to be a place for those souls who are rebellious. And the idea is that it's not like eternal damnation where forget about him. Krishna never forgets. He comes with us. He's with us as super soul. Every living entity, even the ones in the plant bodies, there's a super soul there. They don't have a chance. They can hear that. These are the few fortunate plants in this backyard. They can hear the Harekrishna mantra. But they're not permanently in those bodies. They gradually come up till they come to human form, and then Krishna either himself or through his representative, the books, the knowledge is available. And so the material world has two purposes. One is to provide an environment where the living entities can try to enjoy separately. And then eventually, when they suffer for that, because there's always suffering, there's going to be old age, disease, and death, and even threefold miseries, they see the light and they take up the process of bhakti to get out. And so it's a twofold thing. It's not just a dungeon, forever damnation. Hare Krishna, welcome. But it is a place of reformation. And so that's the idea behind the material world. But most people don't understand that. They just see, it's an arena where there's a lot of suffering, but I can somehow eke out a place and be happy for a while. The whole Maya baby, who's in charge of the material world, she has a function to perform. One is to try to keep us conditioned and to bewilder us, to test to see if we're actually determined to get out. And therefore she creates an environment where we continue our forgetfulness. And there's certain allurements of enjoyment that make us, forget completely. And so, Krishna consciousness directly warns us against that. It gives us the vision to see through the eyes of the Shastra. We're on page 10 and 11. That material enjoyments are actually our worst enemy. As Krishna says in the 5th chapter, I quote this verse practically every class. Yehi sangsparjaja bhogat dukkha yona evate. The very enjoyments, sense enjoyments that you experience are the source of your misery. They have a beginning and an end. We don't have a beginning and an end. Is it? We're eternal. The body itself has a beginning and end, but we as souls have a beginning, are eternal. Therefore, any pleasure that has a beginning and an end cannot fully satisfy us. We have to find that source of unending, ever-expanding pleasure, and it's not in this material world, So we need a connection with the spiritual, even while in the material world, and that comes through the knowledge as given, the examples of this pure life as given by great saints like Srila Prabhupada, and the means of advancement, centered on, in this age especially, the chanting of the holy name. And so that's what's going on. Now, in this introduction, we've been reading, as I mentioned earlier, we started reading the preface. We actually started reading the setting and the scene. I don't know if we ever read that before in the Bhagavad Gita. But we read everything up till now. And Prabhupada, you can see the thrust. He's trying to establish, first the authority of the Gita and the authority of this Gita, especially. Because like everything else that's pure, this material world can contaminate even the Bhagavad Gita. In other words, you can be presented by someone who's not really a pure devotee of Krishna for some material reasons. Some scholar this can be part of his course, and it's basically just, how does this relate to this? He's not looking for guidance for his life, essential guidance, And so that person cannot present the Gita as it is. You can read that, and there are many Gitas like that. I always like to tell the story. I read a Gita like that back in 72, little penguin Gita. The Gita boils down to 700 sentences, which is not very long, the little paperback, without all the explanation, the Sanskrit and everything. And so I had no idea what to do, even though at the end it says, Sarvadharma Parityaja, no Sanskrit, surrender unto me, whatever it was. But that didn't mean anything to me. How, why, where, So it didn't have its effect. But you read Prabhupada's Gita, even before reading the Gita, you read the whole introduction, and it can transform your life. The whole idea, there's a urgency about it. In other words, this is the knowledge that can, allow you to perfect your life and break out of the round of birth and death. So it's kind of a big wake-up call. It's a revelation if you're open to it. And so it for those, and it has this effect, and many people would read it and say, "Whoa, now I understand." And oftentimes it leads people wanting to further investigate Krishna consciousness. How can I practice what I've been reading about? All right, let's go on. Middle of page 11. What is this consciousness? Okay, what is he talking about? Consciousness is already there because we are part and parcel of the Lord. That's the previous paragraph. What is this consciousness? This consciousness is I am. Then what am I? What am I? In contaminated consciousness, I am means I am the Lord of all I survey. I am the enjoyer. The world revolves because every living being thinks that he is the Lord and the creator of the material world. Material consciousness has two psychic divisions. One is that I am the creator, and the other is that I am the enjoyer. But actually the Supreme Lord is both the creator and the enjoyer, and the living entity, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is neither creator nor the enjoyer, but a cooperator. He is created, and he is the created and the enjoyed. For instance, a part of a machine cooperates with the whole machine. A part of the body cooperates with the whole body. The hands, the legs, the eyes, and so on are all parts of the body, but they are not actually the enjoyers. The stomach is the enjoyer. The legs move, the hands supply food, the teeth chew, and all parts of the body are engaged in satisfying the stomach, because the stomach is the principal factor that nourishes the body's organization. Therefore, everything is given to the stomach. One nourishes the tree by watering its root, and one nourishes the body by feeding the stomach. For if the body is to be kept in a healthy state, then the parts of the body must cooperate to feed the stomach. Uh-oh. Can we close that door? Just for now, I think. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the enjoyer and the creator, and we, as subordinate living beings, are meant to cooperate to satisfy him. This cooperation will actually help us, just as food taken by the stomach will help all other parts of the body. If the fingers of the hand think that they should take the food themselves instead of giving it to the stomach, then they will be frustrated. The central figure of creation and of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, and the living entities are cooperators. By cooperation, they enjoy. The relation is also like that of the master and the servant. If the master is fully satisfied, then the servant is satisfied. Similarly, the Supreme Lord should be satisfied, although the tendency to become the creator and the tendency to enjoy the material world are there also in the living entities, because these tendencies are there in the Supreme Lord, who has created and manifested who has created the manifested cosmic world. So Prabhupada is actually quoting a verse here. Yata todo mul nishecharena chipranti tatskanda bujo pashaka pranopahara chayatendriyanam tataiva sarva hanamachuteja. So arhanam achyuta ija. So the question is, what about the demigods? If I serve the demigods, I worship Brahma, I worship Indra, I worship Shiva, then I can go to the heavenly planets, or I can get this benediction. Why is it necessary to worship Krishna? So this verse is exactly, Prabhupada is exactly following here. The idea is that just as by watering the root of a tree, you nourish the whole tree, and just by feeding the stomach, you nourish the whole body. Similarly, by serving Achyuta, Krishna, you satisfy all the demigods. And they, everything is in tune. And we have examples in the Bhagavatam of great kingdoms run by Yudhishthira, Prithu, in which there was, just enough rain at the right time, and, the rivers and everything supplied. In other words, nature supplied everything, and there was harmony and prosperity. So we're why is everything so out of balance now? I mean, you don't have to be very erudite to see that things are getting way out of balance. The climate change going on, the mental and emotional state of the people, not just in America but all over the world, is tremendously disrupted. You have the COVID-19, which is maybe you'd say, well, that's not a human creation. Well, what created it? Oh, it came up from the animals in some market in China. No, it's created. It's coming. It's a natural disturbance that to teach us that we're out of sync. We're out of sync with God, with Krishna, with His plans, and there's going to be a whole lot of suffering unless we reform that. Nature. Where was I just reading this? Oh. I'm working on the third canto, reviewing the third canto. That's what I do. I'm reviewing the whole Bhagavatam. And Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu have just been born. They're very dramatic, like the first big demons in the universe. They're called Daityas because they're sons of Diti. Of course, so is Prahlad. Prahlad is also a descendant of... He's a Daitya, but he's not a demon. But anyway, so when these two big demons took birth, there were all these natural disturbances in the world. And Prabhupada makes a comment, when you see an upsurge of natural disturbances, you should know there are more and more demons taking birth, especially in positions of leadership. I'm not naming any names, what I mean. But I mean, it's all over the world. So the idea is everything is interacting. There's connected. Everything's connected. Because we're all connected to Krishna, and Krishna's connected to everything. Just like in your own body, if one part of it is out of balance, is sick, then the whole body suffers. So, similarly, we are trying to tune our own personal ecology. Each body is like a little universe, and we're the Lord of that universe. But we're not really. Eventually, it breaks down, and Krishna is actually the Lord of the universe. But we can do the best thing for ourselves and for everyone else by becoming Krishna conscious, which means literally becoming conscious of Krishna and attuning our activities of body, mind, and words to Krishna's will. That's what bhakti ultimately is. And then what happens to our consciousness? It becomes peaceful and it becomes joyful. That's like the first installment. You become more and more peaceful, more and more joyful. You're able to tolerate all this craziness without going nuts yourself, and being fearless even in situations that are anxiety producing, because and you're acting. You're not just knowing it theoretically, but you're living it. That I have a relation to Krishna. The best thing I can do now, right now in my life, is to maximize my Krishna consciousness, increase my chanting, get more serious, because how much time do we really have? Who knows? I'm supposed to give the Sunday class in a couple of weeks, you know, and they want to figure out a theme. And all I can think of is don't waste time. Don't waste time. This is like a major theme in our in our Shastra, because this we have a golden opportunity. Human life, we've come in touch with this knowledge. Most of us are practicing to some degree. We're trying to get serious. So there's an urgency about it. And all of this, madness going on, we can take it as there's a silver lining. Let's get serious. Who knows how many days, or, months or years we have left. This is one of the blessings of getting old. You don't have much time. It's not, it's not a mystery. Don't procrastinate, And we just had this lesson, this wonderful lady who grew up here. Her name was Shamali. She was known as Gaur. I didn't even know her name was Gaur Chandra. Charana, I'm sorry. Yeah. And she, a child of devotees, raised in devotee family, wonderful. And she, the last few years, she started going on the Polish tour. She got initiated. She's a wonderful devotee. Bhishma Dev, who became a brahmachari here, you may remember, some of you, he was here as the president for a while. So they got married, but then she came down with cancer, and inoperable cancer. This was a few months ago. And she wrote a beautiful goodbye, to everybody on this card. I don't know if you got a card. And she was saying, well, this life was shorter than I expected. But we're taught, that we're eternal, we don't die. And I want to thank my spiritual master. He was on the phone with her from Vrindavan. He's stuck in Vrindavan. He would be on the Polish tour now. I think he'd be winding up with a big Woodstock. But nobody's, so he's holding up in Vrindavan, but with, the internet, he could speak to her. So he was speaking to her for hours, and her parents were there, her husband was there, and chanting and everything. And she had a very auspicious send-off. She herself was preaching to everyone else and teaching them how to remain calm, and hey, what the philosophy is, this is what we're all headed toward, and it's actually a teaching for all of us, that there's no assurance how much time you have. Let's get serious, chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 regs, and try to go back to guided as far as we can. So, and Prabhupada showed the example. He showed the example himself, and he came to America, and he was already quite senior. He was 69 years old. Health wasn't that great. Risked his life, as you know the story, to a couple of heart attacks on the boat. And then after finally things got going in 66, then he has a stroke in early 67, and he had to go back to India, and somehow, he was able to get cured in Vrindavan, and then for 12 years just expanded everything. But whenever, you saw him, he was either writing or speaking, or, teaching how to cook, or chastising his disciples or praising them. He was involved in growing the movement and serving Lord Chaitanya, glorifying, all for the sake of us, to save a few more souls from, millions of years of suffering. This is actually what we're talking about here. So all of this, what else really has meaning? Everything else is a distraction. It's all a distraction, whether it's some highfalutin philosophy or entertainment or whatever it may be. So we're so fortunate here to be embarking again on the Bhagavad Gita. Now, Prabhupada, just a couple of things that we read here. He defines mukti. Mukti hitpa anyata rupam swarupena vivastati. This is such an important phrase. It's not even a whole verse. This is part of the table of contents of the Bhagavad Gita in the second canto. Second canto, chapter 10. It defines what are the 10 subjects in this Bhagavatam. And it gives a little explanation of each one. And this is the explanation for mukti, or liberation. Now, most people, that word evokes, oh yes, I'm going to merge into the Brahman, and I'll achieve nirvana, right? I'll have no body, no death, no birth, like that. That's not what it's talking about. Mukti hitva anyata rupam. What does that mean? Hitva means giving up. Mukti means giving up other forms. This is one of them. And even in this one lifetime, we go through many forms, right? You know the verse. So that they can't be our eternal form. I mean, none of our previous forms in this life stayed very long, right? Each day you're growing, changing, and after a few months you're different, and years you're obviously different. So what is to be in the Swarup? Swarup means your eternal form. So Krishna consciousness culminates, the process ultimately. It may take several lifetimes, but that's the culmination, where you understand more and more what your eternal form is in relation to Krishna. In Goloka Vrindavan and Gaudiya Vaishnavism especially, we're aiming toward Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, Radha and Krishna, the gopis, the cowherd boys, the friends, the cows, all of that. Somewhere we have a place, We may be a cowherd boy, maybe a cowherd girl, we may be a cow. It doesn't matter, because everything's fully conscious, and they're all perfectly happy serving Krishna and getting his foot dust, whatever it is. And so that's our Swarup. We don't know what it is now, but it'll be revealed to us, according to how we advance and purify our consciousness of all of this false ego involving this particular body. So that's what mukti really means: liberation from contaminated consciousness of this material world and situation in the pure consciousness of our Swarup. Swarup involves the form and the name and the activities and the personality, everything that's covered now. We have that; it's covered deep in our heart. Okay, and then did we read that? What is this consciousness? I am. Yeah, we read all of that. Any discussion on these points? Yes, Prabhu, please. What happened to our... Didn't even get the mic. I'll repeat it. Go ahead. We have it here. Alex?
Okay. It's a film that's at least 30 years old. And long story short, the Hopi nation, which is incredible. Talk about being in tune with the earth. Everything was just fine. Everything was great until the white man came. But they prophesied that eventually there'll be a life out of balance. There'll be poisoning the pesticides and contaminating the rivers, and all this horrible stuff's going to happen. And the film is a documentary, and it shows what our society is doing. And this was 30 years ago.
So they prophesied like 30 years ago?
Well, actually, the Hopi prophecy is even older than that. The film is 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It's a documentary, but it goes all the way. But Hopi have been in place since the year 1200, 1100, long before the Spanish got here.
Yeah.
But they whatever their religion was, they had that sense that we're talking about here, that everything was just the right amount of water, the right amount of rainfall, the crops grew. They were in perfect balance.
Yeah. That this understanding that we're part of nature, and that there's an intelligence behind everything, and that if we're leading pure lives, then nature will also cooperate. The higher beings, that's very much part of the Bhagavatam. You'll find that also. Okay, let's go on, and then I'm going to read a little poem for you, unless anyone has an objection. Okay. Where am I? Second chapter, page 12? Is that where we ended? I think so. We shall find, therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita that the complete whole is comprised of the supreme controller, the controlled living entities, the cosmic manifestation, eternal time, and karma. I think those are the 5 subjects. Or activities. And all of these are explained in this text. All of these taken completely form the complete whole. And the complete whole is called the Supreme Absolute Truth. The complete whole and the complete Absolute Truth are the complete personality of God, Sri Krishna. All manifestations are due to his different energies. He is the complete whole. Now, does anyone get a little sense that you might be reading the purport to the invocation to the Ishopanishad? When you talk about complete, there's a complete purport there, where Prabhupada uses the word complete. Om Purnamada Purnamada Purna. And we're going to write in the next, I think, it comes up. It is also explained in the Gita that impersonal Brahman is also subordinate to the complete Supreme Person. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Brahmano hi pratishtaham means the Brahman is situated on me. Is resting on me, just like in the Brahma Samhita, some of you know, Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda Koti. That Yasya Prabha, I mean Govinda's Prabha, his effulgence is the Brahman effulgence which is producing all the universes and everything. Brahman is more explicitly explained in the Brahma Sutra, to be like the rays of the sunshine. The impersonal Brahman is the shining rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonal Brahman is incomplete realization of the absolute whole. And so also is the conception of Paramatma, Supersoul. In the 15th chapter, it shall be seen that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottama, is above both the impersonal Brahman and the partial realization of the Paramatma. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Satchit Ananda Vigraha. The Brahma Samhita begins in this way. Ishvarak Paramakrishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha. All right, I'll say, you say. You know this one. Ishvara Paramakrishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam. Wow. Okay, I feel like I'm in the forest of Naimisharanya here. The Brahma Samhita. Okay, we've read that. Govinda, Krishna, is the cause of all causes. He is the primal cause, and he is the very form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Impersonal Brahman realization is the realization of his Sat, eternity feature. Paramatma realization is the realization of Sat Chit, eternal knowledge. But realization of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, is realization of all the transcendental features, Sat Chit and Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, in complete vigraha, or form. People with less intelligence consider the supreme truth to be impersonal. But he is a transcendental person, and this is confirmed in all Vedic literatures. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. Katha Upanishad 2.2.13. This was the first verse I ever learned, that phrase. Nityo nityanam chaitanam. As we are all individual living beings and have our individuality, the supreme absolute truth is also, in the ultimate issue, a person, and realization of the personality of Godhead is realization of all of the transcendental features in his complete form. The complete whole is not formless. If he were formless, or if he were less than any other thing, then he could not be the complete whole. The complete whole must have everything within our experience and beyond our experience, otherwise it cannot be complete. And this is practically verbatim from the Upanishad. The complete whole, the personality of Godhead, has immense potencies. Parasya Shakti Vibhadhaiva Shuyate. How Krishna is acting in different potencies is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita. This phenomenal world or material world in which we are placed is also complete in itself, because the 24 elements of which this material universe is a temporary manifestation, according to Sankhya philosophy, are completely adjusted to produce complete resources which are necessary for the maintenance and subsistence of this universe. There is nothing extraneous, nor is there anything needed. This manifestation has its own time fixed by the energy of the Supreme Whole, and when its time is complete, these temporary manifestations will be annihilated by the complete arrangement of the complete. There is complete facility for the small complete units, namely the living entities, to realize the complete, and all sorts of incompleteness are experienced due to incomplete knowledge of the complete. So the Bhagavad Gita contains the complete knowledge of Vedic wisdom. And no, it keeps on. There's more completes to come. So, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yovadati Kamam. Nityo Nityanam. So Nitya is singular, Nityanam is plural. And Chaitanas is singular, and Chaitananam is plural. So, of all the eternal conscious beings, there's one, the singular, Eko Bahunam Yovadati Kamam, who's supplying the necessities of all the others. And that's Krishna. So that's the idea behind this one. And Prabhupada, this Parasya Shakti Vivadhaiva Shuyate, this is a verse also from the Upanishads describing how the absolute truth, first of all, he has no duty to perform. Natasya kayam karanam cha vidyate, natat samaschab yadikascha drishyate. He has no equal, and no one can be equal to him or greater than him. Parasya Shakti Vivadhaiva Shuyate, we learn from the Shrutis that He has all kinds of varieties of energy, parasya shakti. And what does he do with that energy? Swabhaviki jnana bala kriyacha. Swabhaviki, by nature, by the perfect balance of all these energies, jnana, knowledge and strength, he's affecting everything that's going on in the material and spiritual worlds. In other words, the idea that he has unlimited energy, this is a very important point when you start studying Vedanta Sutra, because it's not that Krishna is being transformed. When we do anything, we're also changed by doing something. By expending energy, by investing ourselves in a certain project, we get transformed by our creations. But that's not true of Krishna, because he's doing everything through his energies. He personally is not working hard. He's just expanding either as his energies or his plenary expansions. Like, for instance, the creation. We have that painting sitting there for many, many years. So Mahavishnu is lying in the causal ocean. He himself is an expansion, ultimately, of Sankirtan, of Balaram. There's a whole expansion. You get the Purusha avatars here. So he's not working hard. He's just breathing in and out. And all these universes are emanating from his pores, and they expand a little bit, and then he expands himself, the Garbhodaksha Vishnu in each universe, and then from Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Brahma appears on the lotus, and then you have Chirodaksha Vishnu, who's the super soul, and he's lying in the ocean of milk and the spiritual planet there in the universe, and he expands into all the atoms. So what's Krishna doing? He's playing in Goloka. He's not exerting himself at all, but it's all his expansions and his energies. Material energies for the material world, and of course the living entities are inherently spiritual, the ones that are in the material world. And then in the spiritual world, there's varieties of spiritual energy, and everything is going on effortlessly, swabhaviki, just by his nature. This is God. This is the omnipotence of Krishna. But the whole thing internally, what he wants is to exchange these loving affairs with his, expansions. That's why he takes the risk of expanding us and giving us some free will. Because without the free will, there's no love. He doesn't want to be our master, at the point of a revolver. That's not any fun. He wants voluntary, rasa relationship. And so we used our free will wrong, so we're in this condition. But now if we use it right, we can get back to our original condition, swarupe, to our swarupena vivastiti. So that's the whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. We ran out of time. But we have time for one little poem. Tomorrow, I don't know if you'll be able to make it, but I'm going to read you the sweet poem. His lips are sweet, his smile is sweet, his lotus eyes and face are sweet. His heart is sweet, his name is sweet. The king of sweet is sweet complete. I didn't even know that was in there. What else can I give you? Just like one. Close that. What else do we have here? Okay. Okay, here's a meditation. Visualize a painting. If you may know this painting, Krishna is sitting on a comfortable seat out in the forest, and there's a little dove on his hand, and there's a deer, and there's a little cow, and it's an idyllic scene, and he's looking very beautiful. The sweetness of Sri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face like autumn moon, but sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly. I'll leave you with that thought. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. You're welcome to stay for the kirtan. Hari Hari Bol.